It is a grey morning in June of 2019, and a helicopter is lowering a wooden crate into a clearing in the Saka forest of far eastern Siberia. And inside it, one of 8 wood bison, each nearly a ton, is blinking into a light no bison has seen in this woodland since the 1860s. If a forest waking from a long silence is the kind of thing that moves you, subscribe. There are more of these comeback stories than you'd believe. Everyone assumed the hard part would be simple survival, keeping those 8 animals alive through the first Siberian winter in a stretch of forest that had held no large grazer for over 150 years. The place had fallen quiet in the 1860s and stayed quiet. No churning, no wallowing, no great bodies moving through the trees, just spruce and shade and silence. 8. That is not a herd. That is a rounding error against a forest this size. 8 animals, released into thousands of square kilometers of cold, closed woodland, with winters that kill and odds that read like a warning. The people who flew them in braced for losses. They were ready to lose some, maybe most. That's not what happened. Within 3 seasons, the foresters were staring at something none of them could explain. The canopy, that dense sealed roof of spruce that had shut out the sky for generations, was breaking open on its own. Light was falling on ground that had lain in permanent shade for a century. And not one of them could say why. What broke it open is the part nobody saw coming, and the part scientists still can't fully explain. I'm Peter, and this is the full story of how 8 animals woke a forest that everyone had written off as silent for good. I'll walk you through 3 things: how this forest fell quiet in the first place, the one piece of science almost nobody has heard, the thing that actually explains all of it, and the morning the researchers stood in that clearing and realized the land was healing itself faster than they ever could have managed it. Picture that closed canopy for a moment. Green above and beneath it, nothing. A living roof and a dead floor. That is the puzzle sitting at the center of this whole story. And to understand it, you have to understand the animal standing in that crate. A wood bison isn't just a resident of a forest, it's an engineer of one. It doesn't live gently on the land, it works it. It churns the soil under a ton of muscle, carves wallows into the earth, strips bark from the trunks, tramples fresh trails through thickets that have gone untouched for decades. It doesn't tidy a landscape, it breaks it, and in breaking it, it builds. Everywhere it goes, it changes the ground itself. And that is exactly why the seal canopy, the beautiful lie told by the treetops, green above and dead below, was about to come apart. The reason it broke open isn't luck, and it isn't magic. It's a single piece of science, a plain idea with an awkward name, one that explains why a handful of big animals can crack a forest open where 100 years of nothing could not. It has a name: habitat heterogeneity. And once you understand it, you'll never look at a big animal the same way again. Habitat heterogeneity. It's an ugly phrase for a beautiful idea, and it is the reason a canopy sealed for a century came apart in 3 seasons. In plain terms, it means this: a big grazer doesn't tidy a landscape, it breaks it. It tramples trails through the undergrowth. It tears open thickets no wind could ever move. It wallows, rolling its near-ton body into the wet ground until the earth is churned to mud. And everywhere it goes, it opens 100 small gaps where light can fall. Here's the part that genuinely unsettled the researchers. And it's the opposite of what you'd guess. Read that again. The animal doesn't clean the forest up, it messes it up, and the mess is the whole point. But to understand why that matters, you have to go back and see what was lost. By the late 1800s, hunting had erased every wild wood bison from this region. The last herds vanished in the 1860s, shot out, driven off, gone. And with them went the churning, the wallowing, the bark stripping that had shaped this ground for thousands of years. The forest went quiet. Without the animals, the spruce closed ranks, trunk against trunk, rank after rank of dark trees, the branches knitting overhead until they sealed off the sky. One surveyor who walked it called what he saw a beautiful lie told by the treetops, green above, dead below, a forest floor held in permanent shade where nothing could root because nothing could reach the light. For 150 years, that was the whole story, a living roof over a dying room. And everyone assumed that was simply how this forest was now, settled, finished, silent for good. This is where the science comes in, the part most people have never heard. When the bison came back, they didn't manage the forest. They vandalized it in the best possible way. Every wallow, every trunk stripped and laid bare like a wound, every trail smashed through the brush was a fresh hole punched in that sealed canopy. Light poured through the gaps and landed on ground that hadn't felt the sun since before the last herd fell. And light, it turns out, was the one thing that Floor had been starving for. A 2022 paper in the journal PNAS, led by a researcher named Elsa Voronova, put a hard number on it. Within 4 years of the animal's return, her team measured a 34% rise in ground-level light, a third more sunlight reaching Earth that had lain in the dark for over a century, and not one tree had been felled to do it. The bison had opened the canopy simply by living the way a bison lives. So what do you actually have to do to fix a forest like this? Less than you think. No decades of planting, no machines, no management plans, no seed sown by a single human hand. Just put the animal back and get out of the way. That was the entire strategy. It sounds almost absurd. It sounds far too simple to work. The kind of idea a serious person dismisses in a sentence. You don't rebuild a broken ecosystem by adding one more thing to it and walking off. Except, here, that is exactly what they were about to test. So they flew the ape bison in. 8 animals, into a woodland that had stood silent for 150 years. They lowered the crates into the clearing, and they opened the doors, and they let them go. 8 near-ton engineers, loose in a forest that had forgotten what one even was. And then they did the hardest thing of all. They waited, and then the land answered, not in a decade, in a handful of seasons. Grasses returned to ground that had been bare shade for 100 years, and the foresters who came to check on 8 animals found themselves standing in a forest they no longer recognized. Picture the morning it landed. A surveyor walks the same transect he has walked for years, expecting the same green ceiling and the same dead floor beneath it, that beautiful lie told by the treetops, and instead there is light, real light, falling in broken coins across the ground, pooling where the canopy had cracked open on its own. The sealed roof of that forest, closed since before his grandfather was born, was breaking apart. Not because a single tree had been cut, because 8 heavy bodies had trampled the trails, torn the thickets, stripped the bark, and let the sky back in. The woodland everyone had written off as dead was waking faster than any team of foresters could ever have managed it. That was the thing none of them could quite say out loud. Then the numbers began to arrive, and the numbers are where it stops feeling like a story and starts feeling like proof. A pedigree book survey, walking the release zone plant by plant, logged 11 meadow plant species reappearing on that forest floor. Flowers and grasses that had not grown there in living memory, returning without a single seed ever being sown. 11 species, nobody planted a single one of them. They simply came back, waiting all along in the soil for the light to reach them. and once the plants returned, the animals followed. Roe deer and hares moved in along the very trails the bison had churned open, using the grazers' paths like new roads through country that had been closed to them for generations. And beneath all of it, the ground itself was changing. The World Bank-funded Saka Rewilding Survey mapped the soil across the valley and found the nutrients climbing, measurably, exactly where the bison had dunged. The animals weren't living in the ecosystem. They were rebuilding it, from the flowers down to the dirt. They aren't the patients here, they're the medicine. Now I want to be honest about what this story does not solve. 8 is a fragile founder number. 8 animals against the whole weight of a Siberian winter, and those winters are still brutal, still capable of taking half a herd in a bad year. One hard season of poaching could undo every bit of this. What happened in that forest is a beginning. It is not a guarantee, and I won't pretend it is one. And then there's the detail that honestly still gives me pause. The old Evenki people of this region had a word for the bison, sakha. Long after the last wild animal was gone, after the hunting had erased them, after more than 150 years of silence, that word did not disappear with them. It survived, oddly, in the name of a river valley. A valley named for an animal no one alive had ever seen there. For generations, nobody could quite explain why that name was there at all. Until the summer, a helicopter lowered a crate into a clearing, and the creature the word described came home to the valley that had kept its name. The word outlasted the animal. That, to me, is the heart of it. A forest waking from 150 years of silence, woken not by machines or management or money, but by 8 animals released and left alone. Put the animal back. Get out of the way. That's the whole secret. 8 animals, one grey morning in June, blinking into a light no bison had seen there since the 1860s. That's where this began. So tell me in the comments where you'd send the next 8. And if a forest coming back from the dead moves you the way it moves me, subscribe. There are more of these comeback stories than you'd believe. Thank you for watching.